Hello everyone, I'm Colin and welcome back to my channel. Hi, it's Friday Colin, interrupting Thursday Colin, because somehow this always happens where I film a video and then immediately after Anna posts something else. So today on Friday, August the 30th, Anna just posted a new video about her lipedema recovery journey. So I will be giving my thoughts about that video at the end, and of course I will include timestamps. First of all, I just want to thank everyone because just recently I hit 5,000 subscribers and actually a little over that now. And it's just wild to me that that many people are interested in my silly influencer drama videos. Honestly, I never anticipated I would be this interested in influencer drama either, so there's that. Well, I say influencer drama, and there has been plenty of that, but from the very beginning, my main interest has been misinformation, and talking about misinformation herself, GlitterAndLazers, because she's at it again, and she's been at it again, honestly, on her threads. Anna's been going crazy with the threads. I think she's trying to get monetized, which apparently you can get your threads monetized, which is just fascinating to me because, I mean, that totally explains why she's been posting those like weird first-person threads where she's describing a movie plot as if it happened to her. And of course, people just scrolling down threads and not realizing what she's doing are gonna be like, wait, what? And of course, engage with her content. I also saw her post recently, like, that Taylor Swift had been spotted somewhere, and when people were like, no, she hasn't, she literally admitted that she was just bored and making things up. I know people have been calling her grifter and lasers for a while now, and it's never been clearer than it is now. But besides that, like I said, I want to talk about misinformation. And specifically with a thread that I did also cover in my last video, but there's some more that I would like to say about it. She says, 2 things we know nothing about, obesity and the ocean. And then she responded to her own thread, I hope people understand that this is obviously tongue-in-cheek. Is it? But the reality is, obesity research is really in the very early days. I have had the pleasure of speaking with several experts in the field, and they agree the next 10 years will change how we understand weight in our bodies. Just like the ocean, we really don't know what we don't know, and what we don't know is a lot. And the point I made in my last video was like, we can't ignore the fact that the food landscape and the obesity rate have, you know, a very high correlation. So it's like, you can't ignore the fact that the food environment is what is making us fatter. Like, it just is. Obviously, there's a lot more complex factors than just like, then don't eat stuff like that. As someone who used to be obese and lost weight, it's very difficult. It's not just physical, but it's mental, it's emotional, it's a lot of things. And I think aspects like that are definitely things we don't really understand, and we probably will learn a lot more in the next 10 years. But the concept of calories in versus calories out is never something that has really been that much in question, at least by serious scientists. There are a lot of influences on obesity and what drives obesity, whether it's, you know, hormone levels and metabolism, etc. And yeah, we don't know everything there is to know about that kind of stuff, but we do have enough information to say, like, if you consume fewer calories than you burn, then you will lose weight. I mean, it really is. That aspect itself is that simple. But as we've learned over Anna's lipedema arc, she doesn't think things are that simple. Anna just posted these photos to her Instagram story. It's kind of a before and after, but not really, because it's one photo from 2017 and another photo from 2024, and she's wearing the same jeans. And she said, I was going to record a video, but I just kept crying. I know this is just the beginning, but sometimes these changes don't feel real. Beyond these jeans, I've seen my pain in my knees and my thighs disappear, my digestive issues vanish, my metabolism return, my acne calm down, and my anxiety decrease. And then in parentheses, also I still have 2 surgeries left to treat my calves and upper body. There is so much to unpack just within this one screenshot, but the first thing I'm going to say is the kind of before and after I don't think I explained. She also posted a TikTok / reel, whatever, saying that she hasn't been able to wear these jeans in 7 years. The TikTok shows Anna trying on a pair of jeans, and the text says, "The last time I wore these jeans was 7 years ago." She manages to zip them. "It took 7 years of advocating for myself to get answers, a diagnosis, and proper treatment. Now, after working hard to manage my illnesses, I can finally wear these jeans again." And of course, people were like, why are you hanging on to jeans that you couldn't wear all this whole time? And I think that's kind of silly because there are a lot of clothes that I wish I had held on to so that I could wear them now that I lost the weight. But there is this thing, especially I think in the like fat acceptance community, that like, well, if you can't fit into something, just get rid of it, which feels like a very hopeless frame of mind, but whatever. Anyway, so people were like, why did you have these jeans for 7 years? And she was like, I just found them in a suitcase in my closet, which might be true, but I don't personally buy it. She's like, yeah, I haven't been able to wear these jeans since 2017 because, you know, she has gotten bigger since 2017. And a lot of people have said that she looks just as big now as she did at her biggest, and I don't think that's true. I think she has gained since she got to her lowest weight with Wegovy, but you can definitely tell the difference between her now and her like a year ago. And I'm glad for her. I'm glad she can get these jeans on. My thing is I do think the jeans don't fit as well now as they did then, which is fine. And she's also wearing like medical grade compression underneath them, which is a factor. But I am glad for her that she has seen a change and she's able to wear these jeans again. I'm sure the surgeries definitely contributed to that. But the thing is also, I feel like she's trying to attribute everything to the surgeries. She credits being able to fit into the jeans entirely to her advocating for herself. And I get the impression that when she says that, she means treating her lipedema with liposuction. But the thing is, I do think she has gained since she got to her smallest with Wegovy, and she could have fit into those jeans before the surgeries and before she gained some of the weight back. I just think it's disingenuous to attribute all of the weight loss to advocating for herself and getting surgery. Maybe she is including Wegovy and getting treatment for other conditions that she has. Maybe she is attributing some of it to that. I hope so, honestly. I kind of do think she is attributing everything to just her lipedema treatment though, because she says, I got a diagnosis, singular. But then she does say managing her illness says, so who's to say, honestly? She is queen of the typo after all. I also want to read you the caption on that post, because there's a different caption on the just Instagram story feed post than the reel itself. She says, I don't have words to fully explain this. I know this will get dumbed down to just weight loss. It's the internet. It's what happens. I want you to know this is so much more than that. I've so fought hard for these changes. It's hard to explain what it feels like to get glimpses of your former self before sickness took over. I'm proud of myself. I'm just really happy. That's all. Hashtag lipedema, hashtag chronic illness, hashtag health. I just, because based on this caption, it feels like she's trying to say the only reason she gained weight since 2017 was because of lipedema. And I don't believe that's true. I do not believe that's true. I am not a medical professional. I'm not an expert in anything like that or anything in general. But from what I've learned about lipedema, I don't think that's true. I mean, she is attributing so many health outcomes to this little bit of liposuction that she got. I mean, it's not a little bit, but like in the grand scheme of things, when you consider her entire body mass, they didn't remove that much. But she says that her pain has disappeared, her digestive issues have vanished, her metabolism returned, whatever that means, her acne calmed down, which I don't know if that's the claim you want to be making, and her anxiety decreased. Like, you're attributing all of that to getting liposuction? I don't think so. I absolutely do not think so. I think she got all of that, though, from people like Dr. Amaron, because we've heard him talk about leaky gut being involved with lipedema, which is not a thing. Leaky gut syndrome is completely hypothetical and unproven. As far as her anxiety decreasing, I can't really say one way or the other. I mean, I think she probably has less anxiety about how this illness will affect her in the future, but I personally don't think this is a reset, as people like Allison Jacobs have said, and people like Dr. Amaron have said. But let's talk about metabolism a little bit, shall we? Because this is the part that I had the biggest issue with. Anna is under the impression that in order for her to lose any more weight, she needed to have these surgeries. In her opinion, basically the fibrotic nature of the fat is what's preventing her from losing weight, even as she claims eating 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day. It sounds to me like Dr. Amaron probably feels the same way. I would be willing to bet she got that idea from him or someone else in this sphere. And it made me curious because that's not something I have specifically looked into, but I am kind of glad that I've been looking into it because I think this is something that I'll need to include in my big lipedema video. I just wondered, does lipedema affect your metabolism? I mean, there have been studies on things like PCOS that show that that does reduce your metabolism. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's the case. So whenever you Google, or whenever I Googled, does lipedema affect your metabolism? What do you know? One of the first results I got was a YouTube video by Dr. Amaron, which is titled, Does Lipedema Affect Metabolism? So let's hear what good old Dr. Amaron has to say.
Okay, here we go with our LipEQ of the week. Does lipedema affect metabolism? Lipedema, the lipedema fat, as it begins to develop, begins to adversely affect your metabolism. It begins to slow your metabolism down. So most patients find that they could be starving themselves. And that's why it's really kind of cruel to expect them to diet more, and they're still putting on weight. That's because the lipedema fat adversely affects your metabolism. It produces hormones that begin to slow your metabolism down, and you then begin to put on weight in other areas. Many times increased normal weight, increased visceral fat. So after the surgeries, when you remove all that lipedema fat and that hormonally active fat, your metabolism tends to re-equilibrate itself, and you then begin to lose weight in other areas.
This is, of course, not the first time we've heard him say this. He has literally said it in one of Anna's videos, standing right next to her, looking at her with his eyeballs and saying, she could be starving. Okay.
Estrogen and other hormones that progressively makes it harder and harder to lose weight. So you're about stage 2, she just begins to lose the whole battle with it, and she can find herself starving, eating very, very little, and she's still putting on weight, right?
All I have to say when I hear him say stuff like this is, source? So I'm gonna do something that Dr. Amaron didn't do and provide some sources, because I found 2 studies that I think really paint a picture. Put your little scientist hat on. I have said and will say again, I'm not an expert in anything. I was an English major, but I kind of feel like reading studies is kind of like cooking, where like, if you can read, you can cook. And that's kind of the same thing with a study like this. If you can read and you're willing to dedicate a little time to digging into the numbers, they're understandable. So there's just 2 studies. I just want to briefly go over them, okay? I'm not going to read like the whole things. But the first one is, it's called Comparison of Actual and Predicted Resting Metabolic Rate in Women with Lipedema. And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the authors' names, but if you just Google the title, you can find it. I'll just put a link. I'll put links in the description so you can look at these yourself. So basically what this study did was they took 108 women who were diagnosed with lipedema, and they measured their resting metabolic rate, also called RMR. You may have seen BMR. I think we in the calorie counting sphere see that number a lot. That's basal metabolic rate, but it's so subtle that they're almost synonyms, but they're not quite. Basically, RMR is just what your body burns while you are in stasis. And it's measured in calories per day, just like BMR. And they measured RMR in multiple ways. The most accurate and most reliable way we have to measure your metabolism is indirect calorimetry. I hope I'm saying that right. They just say IC, which is a lot easier to say. I don't know how this works, but basically you breathe into this machine and it measures your metabolism. I don't know. Again, not a scientist. I don't know how that works, but it is considered the most reliable method of measuring your metabolism. And they compared that measurement to, I think, like 13 other equations. 12, sorry, they compared that to 12 other measurements. All of these different types of equations are the ones that are used whenever you just Google, what is my BMR? You enter in your stats, your sex, your age, your weight, your height, and it spits out a number. And all of these different equations are different ways to get you that number. And obviously all these equations are just a little different, so you're gonna get different numbers for each one. Basically, this study was just trying to say, how accurate are these equations specifically for women with lipedema? The results were not great. Basically, the equations, like, collectively were only like a little under 60% accurate, both measuring over and under the actual RMR. For these 108 women, the average RMR was 1,705 calories. And I'll probably put a picture up, like a screenshot up of all these different other equations. I think all of the equations except for one outlier actually measured on average under the real RMR. Based on all of these other equations, they would be telling these women to eat less than they could to lose weight. RMR is like your calories at a complete rest, right? So it doesn't take into account all of your activity. You could work out a bunch and therefore you'd be burning a lot more calories. Not to mention, you just kind of burn calories going throughout your day-to-day activities. On average, these women are burning 1,700 calories at rest. So they could consume 1,700 calories and just do daily activities and get a little bit of exercise and lose weight. All of these other equations, minus that one weird outlier that gave a calculation of 1,900, if they based their calorie intake on any of these other equations, they'd actually be losing weight quicker. Okay, well, another advantage to doing some editing the next day is that I can catch when I didn't explain myself sufficiently. Basically, yes, they found that all of these different equations weren't terribly accurate when it came to measuring RMR, but what they did not find was that the numbers were like crazy different. If someone, regardless of whether they have lipedema or not, got, say, 1,500 calories on a BMR calculator, indirect calorimetry is not finding that they're actually burning like 1,000. The numbers are not accurate, but they're not like crazy off. And that's true for everyone. A BMR calculator is just a tool to give you a rough estimate of what your calorie intake should be. And what they found with this study is that on average, the BMR calculators that they were using, all these different 12 equations, were on average kind of lowballing, which says the exact opposite of what Dr. Amron and GlitterAndLazers are saying. Lipedema did not ruin these women's metabolism. Their metabolisms honestly seem pretty average. Okay, that was my main point. Now I'm gonna throw it back over to Thursday Colin. One of the biggest faults from this study was that there was no control group. They only looked at 108 women with lipedema. They didn't have a control group of healthy women without lipedema, which I think is just annoying. Like, you can't always have a control group for everything you study, but this in particular would have been really easy to have a control group. So I don't know why they didn't. But the funniest thing of all about this study is the reason why they did the study in the first place. Here's a snippet from the abstract. An adequate dietary energy supply is particularly important in patients with lipedema as it promotes weight and fat loss. Accurate estimation of resting metabolic rate allows implementing a proper calorie restriction diet in patients with lipedema. Our study aimed to compare actual resting metabolic rate with predicted resting metabolic rate in women with lipedema and to determine the association between individual body composition parameters, body mass index, and ARMR, which is accurate RMR. Huh, that's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Nowhere in this study did they ever suggest that these women with lipedema were just gaining weight no matter what their calorie intake was. The whole purpose of this study was to accurately gauge what kind of calorie restriction that these women should be receiving. And what they found was most of these equations, which are not as accurate as the breathing method, the IC, were giving numbers that were actually lower than they needed to be. On average. Not necessarily for every single person, but on average. So there's that study. Now the other study I found even more interesting. This one is titled The Effect of a Low Carbohydrate, High Fat Diet on Laboratory Parameters in Women with Lipedema in Comparison to Overweight/Obese Women. And the best thing about this study, there's a control group. Love to see it. Basically, they were trying to assess what would be the best diet for someone with lipedema, and they tried a low-carb, high-fat diet, which would be something more like, they designed theirs around like the Mediterranean diet. Notably though, they assessed the patients based on whether they were overweight or obese, like how much weight they could lose, and they gave them an appropriate calorie deficit based on that. And what do you know? They all lost weight. I mean, it's hard to argue with the evidence, isn't it? It's just frustrating because, like, I can't place all of the blame on Anna, although, you know, everyone is responsible for the information they put on the internet. But I can't blame her entirely because she has doctors like Dr. Amron feeding her this potential misinformation, no pun intended. I just wish Anna would do something like get her resting metabolic rate and see like exactly what she needs to be doing. I feel like it would be hard to argue with that data point, but also she would probably find some way around it, I guess. I'm also just especially annoyed by stuff like this because it's another excuse that people like Anna give to distrust doctors. She's been posting a lot of stuff on Threads lately that really calls the medical practice into question. Finding a good doctor if you're plus size is freaking hard. Here's what I did to find a doctor that actually listened to me. Bonus, I've learned good doctors tend to run in packs. So if you find a good primary, they will likely refer you to other good doctor as specialists. Sometimes insurance will F this up for you, which is not their fault. 1. Use ZocDoc. Read reviews. You can also learn a lot about bedside manner from what people liked or didn't like from them. 2. Call the office and ask questions about their policies on weighing patients and ask if they have seats for plus-size bodies. In my experience, if they don't have a chair for you, they don't have care for you. 3. Research them on PubMed. You can get a good idea about what they care about based on what type of work they've been a part of academically. Girl, get a proofreader. 4. If they don't run labs before assessing you, run. They need to know your levels before making suggestions on how to improve your health. I don't necessarily disagree with most of those points, except for ask about their policies on weighing patients is fully some health at every size nonsense that I do not subscribe to. But what especially worries me about this is she's saying they tend to run in packs, and like, if that's the case for someone like Dr. Amron, that kind of explains a lot about her experience lately now, doesn't it? It's really interesting. I have talked plenty of times about how I feel like Anna has a cycle, much like Amberlynn Reed and Foodie Beauty. And you know, this is absolutely not the first time that I've heard her talk about trying to find a good doctor, but it sounds way different than it did back then.
I just feel like I have to make a video. So if someone out there is thinking like, should I go to the doctor? Like, are they going to be mean to me? You shouldn't care whether they're mean to you. You should care whether they can help you figure out what's going on. And if they tell you to lose weight, well, if that's like the worst thing that could happen, I think it's worth it, to be really honest. I think it's worth going to the doctor and learning why you feel the way you feel. Interesting how she said if the worst thing that they have to say to you is lose some weight,
So what? Boy, has she changed her tune lately. But that may have been where her health journey this time started, but it's certainly not where it ended.
I went to the doctor. I was going to what's called an endocrinologist, and they look at something that's related to your endo system. Endocrinologist, makes sense. I was there because I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is where my immune system attacks my thyroid. This guy like calls me back to do an ultrasound. The entire time, this man is like with the thing on my neck. I'm covered in jelly. I'm like this, and this man is rubbing the thing up and down my like throat to capture my thyroid. He's talking to me about my diabetes, which is like hilarious because I'm not there for diabetes at all. And he goes on and on and on about how sometimes you have thyroid problems because of diabetes. And I literally had to stop him in the middle of the conversation and be like, sir, I'm not here for that. I have Hashimoto's. And he looks at me and he's like, have you been diagnosed? And I was like, no, I just magically showed up and thought of this like bizarre sounding disease's name to say to you. No, I'm here because I have Hashimoto's. I didn't say it that sassily. I was very polite. I said, no, I've been tested. As a plus size person, the immediate assumption anytime you walk into doctor's office, or at least it had been in the past, is that you are there because you have diabetes. I'll be real. I don't have diabetes. I was pre-diabetic, but we'll get to that in a second. And then she looks at all my paperwork, kind of shuffles it around, puts it on the table, and she goes, what are we going to do about your weight? And I was just like, in other times, I would have been really upset, especially since I've been putting in a lot of work to making really positive changes in my life. But instead I said, I'm okay. I'm managing that with my primary healthcare provider. I'm not interested in seeking extra consultation on that. And you could tell she was a little pissed because she was definitely ready to sell me some shitty diet. I leave and I'm like, everything felt bad. I don't trust anything that happened in that doctor's office. Like the feeling was like terrible. And I was like mad because like also I've been working my butt off to make changes, like actual changes. I haven't been on a diet, but I have like changed things like how much salt I put and stuff. And I've started using, alternatives to sugar. Like I've just made natural organic changes and I've done the work. So it was like frustrating to walk into an office and feel like I made absolutely no progress and maybe had reverted. Fortunately, I had another appointment scheduled with my primary care doctor in the afternoon for some other stuff we're dealing with my anemia and also some lady problems. He looks at them and within 2 minutes of looking at them, he goes, first off, I'm really proud of you. And I go, what? Because I had just like come from an appointment where I felt like I had been failing. He goes, yeah, when we started, you were pre-diabetic. You're not anymore. You're not pre-diabetic anymore. You are right at a normal range and you did that in 4 months. I'm really proud of you. And then I was like, me? I did that? And then he was like, your cholesterol was already good, but you've also lowered it and you've lowered your blood pressure. And he's like, and everything I can see in these documents is that you're taking your medication, you're doing the things we discussed, and it's changing you. He's like, when I talked to you in the beginning, I told you this wasn't a 3-month journey and that it was a 3-year journey, maybe 4. And he's like, you're on that journey and you're doing a good job. And I said, well, hold on. You mean to tell me that I am no longer diabetic, I've lowered my cholesterol, lowered my blood pressure, and like there's other positive health signs. And then I proceed to tell him about this other doctor and all the things she said. And he's like, what? And he's like, let me see the medication. So I pull up the medication. He goes, yeah, that is the exact same thing I prescribed you already. He's like, I can't really say anything, but that's disappointing.
Sorry if you can hear my AC, but it's really freaking hot today. That first video is from October 16th, 2022, and the second video is from February 16th, 2023. So about 4 months between those videos, but boy, what a change of tune, huh? Whatever happened to, if the worst thing that they could say to you is to lose weight, who cares? What happened to that? I also think it's really interesting that she phrased her words very carefully there, that well, I'm not here about my diabetes. Not that she didn't have diabetes, but that's not what she was there to talk about. Because we later go on to hear in the same video that she was diagnosed with pre-diabetes and that doctor's office thought her insulin was high. I also love that she was like, I was so sure that this doctor was about to sell me some shitty diet. Sell you a diet? This is a doctor, ma'am. Here's what I will say. She does go on to talk about how she went back to her primary care provider and he sang her praises, basically. So, there's a couple of possibilities here. Number one, she just had a bad experience with this particular doctor. I could see where this doctor could be perceived as having a poor bedside manner at the very least. Not to mention she tried to prescribe her something she was already taking, which is weird. That did strike me as weird. I don't really understand what happened there. I'm not going to be a doctor apologist because I do genuinely believe that she very well could have had, kind of a discriminatory experience. But as much as Anna was talking about her primary care provider, like, singing her praises, I kind of wonder if perhaps some doctor shopping was really working in her favor here. Maybe the other doctor was really just giving her some hard truths. Because, again, she's like, well, I'm not on a diet or anything. And it's like, okay, Anna, but you're somewhere around 500 pounds. No offense, you should be. Not because I hate fat people. I was a fat people, and I needed to lose weight for my health. And I think someone who fits the category of like morbid obesity should absolutely lose weight for their health. I would love for her to live a long and happy life, and I know that she has friends and family who would also love to see her live a happy life. I think Anna seems like the type of person who really can't handle it when people do give her hard truths. Like, she really seems like the type to doctor shop until she finds someone who will tell her that her metabolism has completely failed and she won't be able to lose any more weight until she gets, liposuction. There was another thread that I wanted to read because it may sound familiar to some of you. She says, I once went to an OBGYN for severe bleeding during my periods. She told me I just needed to lose weight and the problem would resolve itself. The visit overall was horrific, and it says I fled the office in tears. Under the guidance of my primary care doctor, I was encouraged to seek a second opinion. Boy, am I glad I did. Turns out I had a tumor. It needed to be removed immediately, and losing weight wouldn't have solved anything. I'm not saying this to start a fight about whether fat people should lose weight or not. Instead, I want to highlight the reality that many plus-size women face. We are often only seen only for our weight when we seek care, and as a result often have to fight for proper medical treatment, if we get it at all. And I have talked about this before. I made a video about Amberlynn Reed and talking about, whenever she had that one health scare, and I know you're probably all thinking which one. It was, I think, the most recent one, perhaps, whenever she found out she had like kidney stones or something. But there was a fear there that because she had had a uterine cancer before, that maybe it could have spread to her bladder, something like that. And that's a legitimate fear. But she got really mad at everyone in her comments who were telling her, hey, this should be a wake-up call for you, as the cancer should have been, that you need to get your weight under control, But she is, of course, like, well, skinny people can get cancer too, and, doctors discriminate against fat people. And that is obviously the exact same thing that Glitter and Lasers is saying here. On some level, I do agree. There is definitely, a good percentage of doctors who discriminate against overweight people or obese people. And they do, kind of chalk everything up to them being overweight. And obviously, that's not the case for everything. But as far as like reproductive issues, a lot of that can be attributed to weight. And obviously the doctor who didn't, find her tumor was wrong for not looking for that. But the conclusion to draw there is not that like all doctors are fat phobic, etc., because I think it would be very fair to assume that her weight does have some impact. Again, I'm not taking the perspective that like, all doctors right, all fat people wrong, because I obviously know that's not the case. But I think I see a problem here where it's like the net of like some doctors can be fat phobic kind of catches a lot of fish that it doesn't need to necessarily catch. If you want to go to a doctor who won't weigh you, I think that is a major red flag. Because like it or not, your weight does affect your health. And you might be a lucky person who, at least for a period of time, doesn't have any like metabolic issues or joint problems. But for the vast majority of obese people, that's probably going to impact your health at some point, especially a morbidly obese person. The reason I make a lot of these videos isn't because I think Anna will ever see this and listen to me and take my advice. The reason I make these kind of videos is because I used to be one of those people who had these kind of opinions, you know? I used to be obese. I used to think that that was my genetic predisposition and I couldn't do anything about it. I used to think that, you know, you could be morbidly obese and healthy. I don't believe those things to be true anymore because I like to follow the science wherever it leads. And I think there is a lot of really good evidence that being overweight, being obese is bad for your health. Plenty of evidence that losing weight is not that complicated. It really is as simple as calories in, calories out. And honestly, any doctor who will go along with, you know, not wanting to weigh you, not considering your weight, who will just tell you what you want to hear, that kind of doctor, I feel like, isn't going to manage your health as well. Yes, sure, your weight shouldn't be the only thing a doctor looks at, but if it's the one thing your doctor won't look at, that's also a problem. I have no problem at all with someone trying to seek out a doctor they trust or seek out a second opinion, but I think it's another thing entirely to just look for someone who will sing your praises and not, you know, actively invest in getting you to your healthiest place. Honestly, I really wish Anna would have taken her own advice from October 2022 and yeah, just go to the doctor. Take the advice the doctor gives you, generally speaking. And yeah, if the worst thing they tell you is to lose weight, I think that's okay. And if any doctor tries to tell you that you can starve and still gain weight, well, maybe then you should get a second opinion. Okay, so moving on to Anna's new video from Friday. It's titled, at least for now, Update, my lipedema removal surgery results so far. So basically this video is just about like Anna's recovery from the 2 lipedema surgeries she's had so far. I think mostly she focused on her recovery from the first one because she's still relatively fresh off the second one. Now, one thing I just have to point out is that she went out of her way to explain why exactly she's been showing things not exactly in order right as soon as they happened.
Part of the reason we've taken some time to put these videos out and they're not exactly happening exactly in real time is because I wanted to put a lot of thought into what we're producing. And then also I wanted to make sure I was answering the questions I was receiving.
Just more evidence to me that she is paying attention to reactions and people, you know, saying things about her online. Again, I feel like I've run this point into the ground at this point, but I don't have any problem with her pre-filming stuff. It's just the fact that she posted things kind of pretending that they happened later than they did. It came across as misleading to me in a way that was not necessary for either her safety or the accuracy of the things that she was putting on the internet. She also explains why she hasn't necessarily shared everything about her own lipedema management over the years.
I was doing other conservative treatments before. I know I didn't always share it on camera, and there was a reason I didn't share it on camera, and I don't really give a crap what anyone says about it, but the reality is I wasn't comfortable being the poster child for lipedema. I knew as soon as I started talking about how I treated it or lived with it or how it affected my life that I would get a sticker slapped on my forehead. I did not feel informed enough to educate people, and I just felt overwhelmed with the condition itself.
The idea that Anna wouldn't share something like that because she didn't want to give false information or be seen as an expert is just so laughable to me. She has had no problem pretending to be, you know, an expert about protein and sharing misinformation about nutrition, in my opinion.
If you're on a similar eating path, maybe some of the things I'm eating will be helpful to you. So personally, I am eating a high protein diet. This is my snack basket.
She has had no problem shilling for Copilot and trying to pretend to be, you know, a personal trainer. And of course, yeah, she'll say things like, you know, I'm not an expert on this, I'm not an expert on this. But then she'll do like a workout lesson video in which she is demonstrating horrible form.
Today, we're doing a series of workouts that are gonna be 45 seconds on and 15 seconds off. And we're gonna do them in sets. The first set is gonna be really easy. I always talk about how consistency is really important. Let this be a lesson. All of this used to be super easy for me. And a couple weeks off, and here I am.
There was even one video where she was like, let me know if you want me to like show you how to use this exercise equipment, which she is obviously not qualified to do.
There's an app that does show you all types of exercises you can use for TRX. So like, don't stress out so much about not necessarily knowing how to use it. There's a lot of tutorials online. Let me know if you want me to make one. I can show you some exercises I use at various levels if that would be helpful.
So the idea that she just, she didn't share about her journey with, managing her lipedema because she didn't want to spread misinformation about it is just ridiculous. I don't believe it for a second. And a lot of people, myself included, pointed out how interesting it was that when she was trying to get her liposuction covered by her insurance, she had to do that like web meeting with an occupational therapist. And in that video, she went over like all the different things she was doing to manage her lipedema, and one of the number one things that's recommended is compression garments. And she told this occupational therapist that she had been doing it, and none of us, at least in the sphere of the internet, none of us believed that because we have never seen her wear it. And of course, Anna has a response to that in this new video too.
I have many, many clips over the years of literally me crying, begging John to turn the camera off because I hurt, because I've swollen. I have videos of me bandaging my leg in a hotel, which was like 3 years ago in Hawaii because my leg swelled. That also happened in various other places. So I've been traveling with compression. I have been doing a lot of these things for a while. And I would say not everything, clearly not everything, because there's a lot of things I've had to add. But I thought, I can deal with these things. I've been doing them for years.
Oh, interesting, Anna. You had all of this footage. You have all this footage of you experiencing the pain and doing the compression and the bandaging. You have all this footage. You just didn't share it before for reasons. So why not share it now? She could be throwing that back in her haters' faces so easily. And she doesn't do it now because, not that she has to demonstrate this to us, but the fact that she says with her mouth, I have footage of these things, and doesn't show it is just so suspicious to me. Not to mention, Anna really has a history of monetizing her struggles.
And it was traumatizing. It was really, really traumatizing. I felt like everybody had an opinion about my body, but no one actually knew me. And it hurt. I reached out to BetterHelp because that's what I could afford at the time, and that's what I started using. It's kind of weird because today's video is actually sponsored by BetterHelp, and it just ended up timing out perfectly that this story came back up after literally 5 years, and they wanted to work with me. For the first time in my life, to be entirely candid, I don't feel like I'm making bad choices. I'm actually just like really proud of myself. And I know some of you will look at this and go, oh, it's a sponsored video. And it is sponsored. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But I did this video because I fervently believe that this is what we need.
She gets online and she cries in front of the camera and she does ad spots for it. I mean, we've seen her do this a million times. I mean, even without, the sponsorship, she's still getting money from AdSense. Why wouldn't she do that? I mean, even specifically talking about the Hawaii trip, that video, the video where she's talking about how hard it was for her to hike and do all this physical activity on her Hawaii trip, that video was one of the main reasons that I was inspired to get my health in order and to lose weight myself. So, I have watched that video many times, on my own for my own reasons before I had a YouTube channel. I don't know, it was really important to me, and it was one of the things that made me like her as a person. Basically what I'm saying is I'm very familiar with that video. I'm very familiar with how vulnerable she was in that video. So you're telling me that you went online, Anna, and you shared this very vulnerable story and you kind of bared your soul to the internet, like why you really think you need to get your health in order. And you had footage of you struggling specifically with symptoms related to lipedema, and you specifically knew that those symptoms were related to lipedema, and you never mentioned it.
I thought I was, I don't know, in perfect shape. Not perfect shape, but I thought I was like much further down the road than I was. And what I realized in Hawaii is that I'm not. My mentality right now is I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start living the life that I kind of put on hold. And my body's not there. My body's not ready. And it's starting to feel a little bit like my body is a little bit of a prison, is a little bit of a place that keeps me from experiencing the world in the way that I want to. And it's It's challenging because I've never been at war with my body. I've always been pretty much at peace with it. But I do feel right now like I'm in a little bit of a war zone where I am pushing my body to do things that it is not accustomed to and not comfortable doing. And it is very angrily pushing back.
Not to mention the fact that typically compression is advised for like basically every hour of the day, especially when you're talking about, you know, as advanced as she says her lipedema is. She says she's stage 4. You would think that she would want to be wearing compression most of the time. And well, how do we know that she wasn't? Well, we don't know for certain. There's really no way to know for certain. But I think there are some hints that suggest that she hasn't been. Number one is how much she emphasizes how she's gonna wear certain things with compression underneath. That is something that she has never, ever brought up before in any of her clothing hauls up until recently while she's been going on this lipedema journey. I mean, honestly, you can make a drinking game out of it. You might pass out by the end of it, but you could.
Because I have to wear leggings all the time now. I'm wearing compression leggings. I don't care. It made my compression look more intentional. It looked really cute with my compression. I actually really like how it's working with my tights. And I feel like it makes the tights feel intentional. As you guys can see, I've got compression gear. I don't even care how it looks with my leggings. I don't care because it allows my tights to feel like they were intentional, especially in the fall or with tights. It really do work with what I have to wear because I'm gonna have to wear them for a while and probably in some capacity for the rest of my life. And still a little worried about the tights, but I feel like I can rock this. I can rock whatever I want, so screw it.
It's just interesting to me that like that's never been something that's been a subject of her clothing hauls before, like how she's going to wear certain things with the compression underneath. You would think that'd be very important to her, you know, over these many years that she's been, you know, complying with all of the recommendations. The next thing I want to point out is that she brought up Leah with Lymph Love Club, except not quite.
I luckily found an amazing person, Leah from Love Lymph Club. If you don't follow her and you want to learn about lymphatics, she's amazing and I absolutely adore her.
Which honestly, I'm kind of glad she did, because if that makes it harder for people to find Leah, then I'm happy about that. I have addressed my issues with Leah of Lymph Love Club before. I have a video titled Glitter and Lasers Clickbaits Uses Alternative Medicine and Addresses Bagelgate. And in that video, I go over some of my skepticism about Leah and all of her interesting beliefs.
So this little energy healing tip, I want you to take your hands and rub them together, drum up some energy.
Another thing that Anna says in this video is that she wishes insurance would cover lipedema treatment.
And I hope to be an advocate for that to change, because it's frankly ridiculous that our healthcare system will pay for a gastric bypass, will pay for a knee replacement, will pay for vein surgery, when they literally could just treat the root problem, which is lipedema.
Isn't that the whole reason that she met with that occupational therapist? Wasn't the whole reason to get her insurance to cover her surgery? And, you know, maybe she's talking about other treatments. Like, I know she got that compression pump and she said that insurance covered some of it, but not all of it. But I would consider that insurance covering lipedema treatment, right? Even if they're just paying part of it. Because, I mean, that's kind of the case with most procedures and most medical devices, right? Maybe she's speaking generally about, you know, other insurance plans that may not pay for that kind of thing. Also funny to me in the same vein that she says, you know, insurance will cover gastric bypass and knee replacement and like vein surgery, but they won't cover the root of the problem, which is lipedema. It's like, well, that's not the case for all of those things, right? That you can have all of those problems and not have lipedema. I understand that's not her point, but it was just kind of phrased weird, where it felt like she was implying that all of those things were caused by lipedema. I think that was just worded weird. The way she phrased it, it sounded like lipedema was the sole reason that she's been having those problems. The reason that she's obese, the reason she has joint issues, the reason she has vein issues, it's all because of lipedema. Like, could lipedema be the reason that someone could get to that level of morbid obesity? Well, that's a dumb question because we already know the answer to that, according to her. I believe it was from a TikTok comment where someone asked, what about bariatric surgery? I've seen people with lipedema of legs lose weight on them after this surgery. And Anna responded, the weight I have left is lipedemic and will not burnable by the body, even in a calorie deficit. And I feel compelled to say the thing that I always say. Say it with me, folks. No one is 500 pounds of lipedema. I'm not saying she shouldn't have gotten these surgeries. I mean, sometimes with lipedema, that is like the only option, or the best option. But I personally think that it was kind of a mistake to do that at her size. Lipedema is not considered like a life-threatening illness. But you know what is? Morbid obesity. I'm just sad because it seems like she feels still, even after these surgeries, even in the face of getting more surgeries, it seems like she feels like hopeless.
Because I am stage 4. That is bad. And I hope that I can help women who are in stage 2 get treatment before they have to deal with all the bullshit I have to deal with. Because candidly, if I had dealt with this 10 years ago, I may not have to do all these extra things. But now my life and my abilities are going to be diminished. And that is a hard thing for me to swallow. I am still holding out for the fact that maybe I have some miracle recovery, but I may not.
Will weight loss solve all of her problems? No, that's something I've already discussed in this video. But I think it could solve a lot of her issues. If she's already in pain from lipedema, the weight she's putting on her joints is certainly not helping. Not to mention all the metabolic problems that come from being overweight or obese. I think her throwing shade at the US healthcare system is warranted, but I also think that's kind of her way to subtly say, like, the doctors that wanted to treat her obesity are actually trying to treat the wrong thing, and I highly disagree with that. I think it was absolutely right for her to treat her lipedema. It clearly seems to me that she hasn't been, but I think just focusing on lipedema as if it's the source of all of her problems is just a mistake. Most of this video was just Anna talking about her personal experience, her recovery journey, and I don't have a lot to say about that. I mean, it was kind of interesting to learn like all the different things that you have to do post this kind of surgery. It's a lot of stuff that I didn't really know about. I think I could have gone my whole life without hearing her talk about bodily ooze as much as she did.
Like, there were times where I just sat on the bed and water just gushed out of me.
But I did think it was interesting. So that's kind of where I'm at with that new video. And with that, I'm going to let Thursday Colin close us out. All right, folks, well, I think that's where I'm going to stop for today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again for over 5,000 subscribers. That's just nuts. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I will see you next time.
I have a lot of stuff in my body. I'm leaking, especially that first 24 hours, you're just leaking a lot. Typical bed preparing, if you're still leaking, is a plastic sheet and then using different pee pads on top. Like, there were times where I just sat on the bed and water just gushed out of me and helped me process all the extra juicy that's inside of me.